All right, we're trying, Cindy.
It does say that it's streaming live to Facebook right now. At least Zoom is saying that.
All right, awesome. All right, welcome you guys. Hi, we're a minute early, so I'm going to hang on a second before we get started. We're going to be talking today about what I like to call the magic of manifestors. And this particular call today is going to be relevant to you, not only if you are a manifestor type in human design, but if you're a manifesting generator. There'll be elements in the conversation that we have today that will be relevant to you as well. If you are the parent of a manifestor, or the partner of a manifestor, or a friend of a manifestor, or a manifesting generator, you're going to learn today some of the key elements that create the manifestor experience in life. So when we talk about human design types and we break human design down into that very basic, simple component. And to me, the elegance of human design, the simplicity of human design really lies in understanding the nature of type. Type is how we interface with the quantum field. It influences the way in which we make decisions and choices. And when we are making decisions and choices in the way that's aligned with our energy, then we make choices that are better for us. That's not the only component that goes into what kinds of choices we make. And I want to be really, really clear that when we start to live true to our human design types, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden everything's going to be magical at first. Sometimes that means that you have to kind of come face to face through your correct decision making with all the things that you have to clear out of the way in order for you to start creating more in alignment with your well-being. There's kind of a process that goes with that. And part of that process of the journey of what I like to call waking up to living true to who you are, part of that process is exploring in depth what is your type, how does your type operate, and the themes that are very common for people who carry your type often deal with. We all have a different way of interfacing with the quantum field. We all have a different way of making decisions. And if you have had a lifetime of not ever learning how to really choose correctly with your energy, how to really interface with all the potentials that are available to you in an authentic way, you were trained to be somehow different than how you really are. If it was never really okay for you to behave in the way that felt most natural to you, then you've got to start first by looking at what's the true story of who you are, and what do you need to rewrite in that story to make it okay for you to be more how you really are. So today I'm going to start this. This is a 6-part series. We started last week talking about healing your inner child by human design. If you didn't watch last week's video, I want to invite you to really go back and watch that one first. It's on the Facebook page. If you're on Facebook, if you scroll down, if you can't find it on the Facebook page, go to our webpage, quantumalignmentsystem.com. It's posted there on the blog, right, Cindy? Is that where it's posted?
Yes, it is. It's posted on the blog, and they see it right on the main page, or if they just click on blog, they'll see it there.
Perfect. Yeah. So it's there for you if you want to go back and watch that one first. This is the 5th in the series. Next week, I won't be doing the series. Next week, I have special guests leading the Quantum Alignment Show. We have Sandra Lee is going to be here. And I'm sorry, I forgot who she's teaching with. Cindy, do you remember?
It's Alana.
Alana, sorry, you guys have met Alana and Sandra both. So Sandra Lee and Alana, oh my gosh, my brain is not working today.
Hi.
Alana, hi, geez. Okay, so I just want you guys to know that's my brain that's not working. These are 2 of my students who have been longtime students who I adore, who are powerful. So Alana has taught a lot of quantum alignment shows about prosperity. and human design and courage and human design. Sandra's done lots of work on talking about being a manifestor and healing. And next week they're coming on Friday to talk more about human design and energy. So please be here next week for our quantum alignment show next week. And I will make sure that you all get good information that's not coming out of my brain today for that. All right. So here we are, reclaiming your inner child by design. And again, a little bit of a warning is that you might get triggered during this presentation. And the only reason I say that is because sometimes when we hear about what is possible for the ways that we could have been raised or the way we could have been taken care of if our parents had known human design, sometimes it causes us to experience grief or sadness for maybe what the trauma of our growing up as a result of our parents not understanding our nature. Sometimes that trauma, that disconnect that we maybe experienced of, that disconnect from our sense of value and that disconnect from our place, our right place in the world, that there's grief that gets triggered when we go through this material. So I want to really let you know that my intention for this call is not to leave you hanging in a dark place, but to give you some things to contemplate. If you are a manifestor, an adult manifestor, some things for you to contemplate as part of your deconditioning process and hopefully as part of your healing the true story of who you are. When we look at parenting, when I teach parenting classes, or when Kristen Shorter, who's going to be teaching a parenting class starting on May 13th, when I teach parenting, and back in the day when I was a child development specialist, before I knew human design was something I added to this perspective. But when I teach parenting, I teach parents to look at what their children are, what the behaviors that their children are engaging in through 4 perspectives or 4 viewpoints. So if you imagine this is the window and you're looking through the window at your child and you're seeing your child's behavior and you're seeing what your child is doing, there are 4 different things you need to consider as part of your parenting strategy. The first thing, obviously, that on this call, at least we're going to talk about, that you want to consider is what's my child's type and how is my child's energy configured? Because sometimes the quote unquote misbehavior that our children are engaging in are a function of type. They're overtired or they're overstimulated or they're processing too much energy or they've got soul contracts to live out certain themes as part of their soul curriculum that are embedded in their design, and they have to go do it. Maybe they're experiential learners and they need to go try things in order for them to get a deep awareness of what they need to learn in order for them to fulfill the truth of who they are. Oops, hold on. The heater is kicking on in here. The second lens through which we look at is the lens of child development. There are just things that kids do at certain ages that can oftentimes provoke us as parents, or create, a little bit of challenge for us as parents. It's normal, for example, for young children between 2 and say 5 and 6 to sometimes be oppositional because part of what they're learning about at that age is how to be powerful. It's normal for 4-year-olds to be afraid of things because they're starting to cultivate a different way of engaging with the world. It's normal for teenagers to defy you. They need to in order to differentiate themselves. And if you can understand this is what my child has to do as part of their development, then you can start looking at it for what it is and working with it for what it is without being harsh or punitive. We also have to look at our children through the lens of our own personal conditioning. So today, as we talk about manifestors, maybe you're a manifestor parent. And maybe as part of being a manifestor parent, it was never supported for you to be how you are in the world. Maybe you never learned about, say, the importance of informing. And so when you parent your children and you forget the informing piece, or you forget that your energy is huge, right? And you've been, maybe you're angry or resentful because you were never allowed to be powerful in your own life. And so now your child is doing power, right? Because they need to. Now you want to overpower them because all of a sudden as your child explores their own power, you're remembering all those places where maybe you weren't allowed to be powerful. Maybe you didn't learn how to tap into your own power. And as a result, you engage in a power struggle, you get locked in a power struggle because you're conditioned or you weren't allowed to be who you really were. And then lastly, but not least, our children do the things that they do part and parcel because the things that they do, particularly misbehavior, is oftentimes a form of communication. And children are communicating some kind of energy need through their misbehavior. And if you don't know how to interpret what your child is telling you that they need, if you don't understand the language of children, and that's not the verbal language, that's the behavioral language of children, and what those behaviors are telling you as the parent, then sometimes you miss the boat on what's really going on with your kid. So you have to have a complete perspective, a good solid viewpoint through this window in order to get the full picture of what's really going on with your kid. And in order for you to then consciously cultivate a strategy to parent your child or discipline your child in a way that supports your child in learning how to more appropriately express their needs and help them get what they want. We learned that when we learn through our old belief systems, this is old energy, right? This is like 1950s parenting, or what we used to call this not a democratic model, but kind of a patriarchal model of parenting, right? Or a rigid sort of disciplinarian model of parenting that we're outgrowing in our consciousness. We learn, many of us, that children misbehave because they're spoiled or they're bad, or we say you're just like your mother or your father, or they're jealous, needy, clinging, whining, etc., or that they have ADD or some other kind of psychological challenge or mental health issues even. If your child is misbehaving and these are your belief systems, then your child is misbehaving because you haven't controlled them effectively, right? You didn't control their behavior enough. That means you're a bad parent. Now, when you are raising a manifestor and a manifesting generator, two energy types that are really not going to do well with being controlled unless you break their spirit. And if you're deeply invested in looking like you're a good parent, so you have to pile on the force to control your misbehaving child, first of all, you're going to break your child's spirit and you're going to disconnect your manifestor, manifesting generator child from their own innate creative power. Secondly, if you're trying to break the spirit or the energy, the power force that is the manifestor, manifesting generator child, you're also going to be exhausted as a parent because you're going to have to use an awful lot of force to shut down that creative element of a manifestor, manifesting generator child. The real reason why children misbehave is because they have unmet energy needs and they're learning how to express their needs. A 4-year-old manifestor can't tell you, hey, I really need to explore the innate nature of my own creative power. So I'm going to go test the boundaries and the limits of what's possible for me. And I really need you to just stand back and let me do what I got to do right now, because I've got to learn how far I can stretch the boundaries and the limits of who I am. So back off, mom, right? Your kids can't tell you these things. So they misbehave because that's the only way they know how to express their needs. So oftentimes, let's say in the case of a manifestor or a manifesting generator, one of the ways in which they're going to express their need for power is they're going to push against you. They need to do that because that's how they test. How far can I go? Where are the limits and boundaries? How much do you love me? Do you love me enough to give me enough freedom to explore? Are you going to push back against me this far so that because you don't believe in my capability? Are you going to let me have so much freedom that I'm going to question whether you love me because there is no boundary? It gets very complicated in this dialogue of learning how to do this appropriately and effectively. The end goal here for parents is helping our children feel lovable, powerful, and capable, giving them the freedom to experiment and explore, especially if they are more experiential by design. That'll be your 3rd line profiles, your 6th line profiles, your manifestors, and your manifesting generators, and other elements in other types too. Every child needs to experiment and explore in their own way. All people need to experiment and explore in their own way. And children need attention to various degrees, depending on their design. Each child's going to get these needs met in different ways, depending on their human design and their unique energy blueprint. So today we're going to explore the manifestor. Now, as I said at the beginning, before we started the slideshow, and I think as we were kind of switching over to Facebook, this presentation today is going to be relevant for you as a manifestor parent, for you if you have manifestor children, and you will also identify or relate to some elements of this if you are a manifesting generator as well, because there's a certain component in the manifestor chart that also is carried in the manifesting generator chart. So let's start first with what makes a manifestor in the chart. So manifestors in the chart, they will always have an open sacral, and they will always have a motor defined to the throat center. So, oops, let's look at what that looks like. So in this particular image, this is the sacral center. This is the most powerful motor in the body. Its workforce and life force energy is metabolized in this center. If you are a manifestor or a projector or a reflector, this center on your chart will be white, meaning it's open. So what happens when anything in the chart is open or white, that's where we take energy in. We take energy in and we amplify it. That's a place where you can borrow that energy. So manifestors, projectors, and reflectors can borrow workforce and life force energy. They can use it temporarily, but they can't hold on to it. And if they try to hold on to it, meaning if they try to work in the traditional way that we think of as work, if they try to define their value by the work that they do, they run the risk of really burning themselves out. And the first thing we have to understand as parents of manifestors and any open sacral person, whether you're parenting a manifestor, a projector, or a reflector, is that you can't approach the energy of work with your child in the same way as you would if you had a generator or a manifesting generator child. So let me break that down for you in a very practical way. I have a 10-year-old. She is a projector. She's not a manifestor. She has an open sacral, just like a manifestor, which means right now, while we're at home and we're homeschooling, I have to really gauge her energy because she can't sit and sort of bear down on her schoolwork for 4 or 5 hours straight without pauses, without respite. She's also taking Hebrew classes and preparing for her bat mitzvah, which is another like 6 to 8 hours of lessons a week on Zoom, plus violin. That's a lot for somebody who doesn't have the kind of sustainable workforce energy that a generator type has. So the first thing you want to know when you have a manifestor child is that this is a child that's not going to have the same quality of energy that you might have if you're a generator parent. Now, I didn't say they don't have energy. It's just a different quality of energy. And the keynote here for the manifestor is understanding that the energy that the manifestor carries is powerful, but it's not sustainable. So recognizing that the open sacral child, in particular the open sacral manifestor, the manifestor child, is designed to have spurts in energy, initiating bursts of energy, but doesn't necessarily have the energy for the long-term haul without cycles of respite or rest in between. And it's not laziness, and it's not lack of motivation, and it's not all those other judgments that we give to people who don't have sacral energy defined in their chart. So the open sacral has a couple of different themes. First of all, as I said, they're not here to work, and they're not here to work in the traditional way of working. I had a client one time, she had one manifestor grandson, and one projector grandson, and her daughter and her children lived on her land, and she had a big ranch, right? And she would send the projector grandson and the manifestor grandson out to like the back 40 in the ranch to mow the grass, right? And to do work, put the fence back together and all kinds. She'd give them chores to do outside, far away from the house. And as soon as they left her energy field, and she was a generator type, as soon as they left her energy field, their sacrals would be like, and they wouldn't have access to that same workforce energy when they got away from the house. So they'd go out to the back 40 and they'd lay around under the tree in the shade. And she was very frustrated with their lack of work ethic until she finally realized that wasn't the right way to engage them in doing chores, and maybe not even the right chores for them to be doing. The open sacral, when you have a manifestor, a projector, and a reflector, when the open sacral gets under pressure from taking in the energy around, that energy gets amplified. So you've got a manifestor that's amplifying life force energy. So if you think you have a lot of energy as a generator, your kid is amplifying that energy, right? And now they're like super generators, and oftentimes the dynamic with that creates an energy pattern of not knowing when enough is enough. So sometimes manifestor children need support in learning when enough is enough. And you need to remember as a parent that sometimes that open sacral energy is going to cause a child to push back against you more than you might think is reasonable, because that's sort of the byproduct of not knowing when enough is enough sometimes. Not so much when they're little, but when they're older, when they're teenagers and older, depending on obviously what your value system is in your family, because the sacral center is also the center for sexual energy. This is an energy that when children go through adolescence and they're in an exploratory phase, there can be a lot of intensity around sexual energy and a lot of confusion sometimes around sexual energy, because when you have an open sacral, your sexual experiences are oftentimes going to change depending on who you're with. So it can feel very different in different partnerships. And certainly I would say, depending again on what your value system is in your family, you might want to have a conversation about this, because it certainly can lead to confusion and has the potential sometimes to cause a young open sacral person to make impulsive decisions or impulsive commitments because of sexual energy, and for them to understand that the nature of how their sexual energy functions is going to be oftentimes influenced by who they're partnering with, and giving them an understanding that they better exploration might be different for the open sacral teenager than for, say, a generator teenager. The other thing that a manifestor will have, in addition to having an open or a white sacral, is they will have a defined motor from the throat. Now, in the human design chart, these are the 4 motors. Remember that the manifestor won't have the red square colored in ever. Here are the different ways that these motors can get to the chart, to the throat. So this is the will center. This is not, by the way, the only way the will center can get to the throat. It has a lot of variability, actually. So the will center can get to the throat. Think of this like, if you remember doing, I don't know, I always did mazes in the car when we went on car trips when I was a kid. I would have those big, like newsprint workbooks that you'd buy at the grocery store with mazes. I like to do mazes. So if you think of this as like a maze, if you can put your pencil down on the will center and follow a colored in line all the way from the will center to the throat, even if it goes through other centers first, because I have some clients where the will center will go down and then up. I have a client where the will center goes over to the diamond and then over to the left and then up. There's a couple of different ways that the will center can make it to the throat, but it has to have colored in channel getting that energy to the throat without you picking up a pencil. It's going to be an uninterrupted flow of energy. So you're going to follow it along with your pencil, but not pick up your pencil at all until you get to the throat center. The other way that some of the other motors can get to the throat is for the manifestor, the root makes it to the throat through these channels. The emotional solar plexus can get to the root. Get from the root to the throat through these channels. There's other ways that the root can get out too. So these are just some different ways that you can get energy to the throat. So again, open sacral, a white square, plus a connection between either the root center, the will center, or the emotional solar plexus to the throat. So that's what makes a manifestor by design. Now, manifestors will have aspects too. Now, the manifestor will always have the red square colored in. A manifesting generator will always have this red square colored in. And in conjunction with that, they will also always have some kind of a motor to the throat connection, just like with the manifestor. So that's really where the manifestor energy comes in. The one exception is the manifesting generator, because they have a defined sacral. They will always have a red square colored in on their chart. if you get a direct channel between the red square to the throat, that also counts as a motor. So some manifesting generators will have all those other motors white in their chart, but if the sacral, the red square, gets to the throat center through colored in channels, that also is manifested energy because it's a motor to the throat. Anytime we get a motor directly connected to the throat center through a channel, we call that manifested energy. Right? Don't worry too much about that. That you don't really need to know that. It's just for my first line profiles who are wanting to know what makes a manifestor. Now you know. If we were going to make life, if we were going to use life as being a show that we put on, if we were all part of putting on a big show with our lives, and we looked at the different roles that people play in putting on a show, archetypically, the manifestor plays the role of the producer. If you are putting on the show and you're a manifestor, you're going to be the one that gets the ball rolling. You're the one that has the ideas, that gets things started, that initiates people into the idea of putting on a show. This is like Mickey Rooney and all the Shirley Temple movies, right? When he says, let's put on a show. That's the manifestor energy. The biggest, most important thing to understand about the manifestor types is that you have an internal, nonverbal creative flow that you need to follow. And that's really the big gift and blessing of the manifestor, and also sometimes the challenge of the manifestor, because this flow gives the manifestor impulses or signals, internal signals about timing around ideas. So manifestors get ideas, they will experience the ideas, oftentimes not really thoughtfully. I'm not saying the manifestors are thoughtless. I'm just saying the spark of inspiration is so fast in the manifestor that sometimes it's not so much about thinking about, okay, I'm going to go do this and then I'm going to do this, but rather more feeling it and then acting on it. The manifestor is the only type that can act on internal impulses because their connection to that divine spark is so immediate and so direct. And it's nonverbal. And that oftentimes presents us with a big parenting challenge when we're raising manifestor kids, because our kid starts to head out to the back 40 to go test the boundaries and the limits of their freedom and their creative expression. And we say, hey, where are you going? What are you doing? And they can't answer us. They can't explain to us naturally. We have to train them to do this. But their natural nature, because of this direct connection to this creative flow that's nonverbal, their nature, the nature of a manifestor is not to immediately be able to come up with the language and say, hey, Ma, I'm going to go outside. I thought about maybe seeing if I could climb to the top of the monkey bars and jump off and see like how far from the monkey bars I could jump off, because I've been thinking a lot about flying. And they can't verbalize that without interrupting their connection to their creative flow. That's important to understand, both if you're raising a manifestor child or if you yourself are a manifestor, because your connection to this nonverbal creative flow is sacred. This is a part of your essence that needs to be honed and nurtured and supported. This is a relationship between you and your creative flow that needs to be cultivated and honored by the environment in which you are raised. And that's not usually how it happens for the manifestor, because what usually happens is the manifestor starts to follow their creative flow, and intuitively, as parents, our first impulse is to shut that creative flow down. Not because we're trying to squelch our children. And that's important to understand, because I think sometimes when parents exert a lot of control over their manifestor children, and as I said earlier, that oftentimes is an enormous amount of effort, because this is a person that is not designed to be controlled. Nobody is designed to be controlled, but you really can't. It's very difficult to shut down this creative impulse of a manifestor without sometimes having to use an extraordinary amount of force, which when I do readings for manifestors, adult manifestors, is oftentimes a source of deep, deep pain, because the amount of force that has had to be exerted on them when they were children to get them to shut down that flow and be obedient was excessive, and I would say abusive. And if you learned that it wasn't okay for you to be powerful in the way that you are powerful, and you have to shut that energy down, it sometimes takes a long time to heal that and bring that back up, and to help manifestors learn how to trust again that internal nonverbal creative flow. So you have a manifestor that has this internal nonverbal creative flow, and you're a parent, and you know suddenly you've given birth to this very powerful being. And oftentimes as a parent, your first instinct is to try to shut down the manifestor. There's a weird irony in parenting. And the weird irony in parenting is that if you give birth to a generator, a manifesting generator, a projector, or a reflector, your first impulse as a parent is to try to teach them to be like manifestors, right? We tell our generator, manifesting generator, projector, reflector children, go out, follow your ideas, make things happen, go manifest your destiny, right? We push them out of the nest and we tell them, go, go, go. We give birth to a manifestor and we're like, nope, 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 nope. You stay right here because we can't trust you out in the world, right? In reality, we can trust all of our kids, provided we raise them up to be how they are, right? And in reality, it's the manifestor that needs more freedom as a child. It's the manifestor that, to a certain degree, is going to be very fine, thank you very much, because it's part of their process in life to learn how to be okay, following their own creative flow. I always wonder, every once in a while we hear these stories about these children who go off into the wilderness, right? And they disappear in the forest for a couple of days. There was one, I think there was one, maybe it was last year. I don't know, time has become very fluid lately, but it was a little boy who, do you remember this, Cindy? They found him like 2 days later, and he said that, I think he said a bear had come and rescued him. And do you remember that? Am I making that up?
No, I don't remember, but that might be a Midwestern thing,
There was a lot of brouhaha about this because he was like, oh, a bear came and a bear, kept me safe. So I don't know if it was, I can't remember now if it was bears or wolves. Anyway, it was a real story. It was a real story recently. And every time I hear those stories, I think, a manifestor child, right? I'm just going to go off into the wilderness and see what happens, right? If you are a manifestor, your life purpose and part of who you are, and this is why we don't want to shut this down, is you lead change by inspiring others into action, because you are an initiating force. You do things, the things you do initiate others, and you kind of push the boundaries a little bit of what's possible as a manifestor. And if you shut that down, you don't get to fulfill that purpose in that same way. In human design, every type has a particular strategy. This is how you make decisions, and this is how you be in the world. The manifestor strategy is to inform others before taking action. And as I said, that's a tricky thing because it's not a natural way to be in the world. In a perfect world, our manifestors could just go do what they do and we'd not freak out about it, right? But in reality, when we're parenting a manifestor child and they take off, or we're married to manifestors, right? And they go do their own thing, because we also bring our own stuff to our relationships, right? We bring our own expectations. If you go back to our window on the bottom left-hand corner, we have our own personal conditioning, right? And if you're deeply invested in, being a good parent, for example, and your manifestor kid goes and does something, and now it's a reflection on you, the parent, your conditioning is making you feel bad, ashamed, or whatever, or, oh, I was a bad parent. Starts to make things get super messy, and then we can't parent effectively according to our type because we have our own conditioning we have to deal with. The manifestor process, the manifestor strategy, is about taking stock before you act of who will be impacted by your actions, and then letting them know what you're about to do. Not because, if you're a manifestor, not because you're supposed to be asking permission, okay? You're not designed to ask permission. You're informing so that people can get out of the way, so that when you start moving, when you start following your inner creative flow, they're going to get out of your way, because they're going to go, okay, he or she is doing X, Y, and Z. That's what they told me they were going to do. And now they're not standing in your way going, hey, what are you doing? Or, oh, do you need some help? Or using language that gets you out of your creative flow. When we're parenting manifestors, we have to learn how to give our manifestor children the insights on how to inform. We need them to inform, because as parents, part of healthy parenting is knowing how to set good boundaries. Because a boundary, a good boundary, a healthy boundary, a boundary that has a little bend to it sometimes, actually gives a child a sense of their lovability. When your child has good boundaries, your child knows, my parents love me enough to set the limits for me so that I can stay safe within these limits. If we are doing permissive parenting, which is tempting to do sometimes with a manifestor child, because sometimes when you set the boundary, the pushback is so strong with the manifestor child. If you're not clear about how to set a good boundary with a manifestor child, and you cave, then you're not holding a good limit, and the manifestor starts to question their lovability. Why can't she hold a boundary for me? Am I not worth the effort to hold the boundary? I'm not saying that your kids think this consciously, but unconsciously, this is what happens. So you have to be able to set good boundaries, but at the same time, allow within those boundaries our manifestor freedom, and allow our manifestor to explore and experiment with, what does it mean to inform? So there are lots of different techniques and strategies for teaching manifestor children to inform. I want to just bring your awareness to the fact that Kristen Shorter, who has come and done a couple of quantum alignment shows, is a parenting expert. She's a certified family coach. She's a human design specialist. She teaches a program called Parenting by Human Design. She's actually raising a manifestor child. He's now, I think he's 12 or 13 now, which blows my mind, because when I first met them, he was like 2. She's teaching a new program, a new session of Parenting by Human Design. She is offering it on a sliding scale, meaning it's open to everyone who wants to take it. We know that this time is really challenging for many of us financially, and many of us are kind of in a pressure cooker with parenting. So she really wanted to open this up as an option for you. So I will give you, at the end of our session, I'll give you the link where you can go learn more about her Parenting by a Human Design program. But I really want to encourage you to take this class, and don't just buy it and not watch the videos. Go to the class, because when you can lay a foundation for someone from the start that allows them to live correctly by their type, you're creating for your child a foundation that allows them to be sustainable in the world, that allows them to connect with who they are, and allows them to really fulfill their right place in what I like to call the cosmic plan, so that they can do what they came here to do. So manifestors need to inform, not because they're asking for permission, but because they're getting people ready to move out of the way, so that when their energy moves through the field of whatever it is that they're doing, everybody can let the manifestor do what they need to do in that creative part, because it's important. Because when manifestors do what they do, then the rest of us get initiated into being how we are. In human design, we talk a lot about not self-emotional themes, or the emotional theme of the type. And if you've had your chart and you look at your chart and it says not self-emotional theme or emotional theme, it'll say things like anger, bitterness, frustration. And people often come back to me and they're like, this is awful. And they think it's personal, and it's not personal, it's by type. So every type has an emotional theme. I see sometimes in human design, people use their emotional theme as an excuse to behave badly. And certainly I'll say in some of the more traditional narratives around manifestor energy, there's sort of this, well, manifestors are angry. I want to rewrite that a little bit, because I think that that's not a very helpful dialogue in the narrative. Well, what is a manifestor, and why is a manifestor feeling what they're feeling, and what does it mean? I believe that all of the emotional themes of the types are a way of lining yourself up with your natural energy. And that if you're not completely lined up with your natural energy and you don't know how to interpret the emotional stuff that's going on within you, you're not connected to yourself. You lose a key element of self-awareness. Manifestors are not these angry people barging through life the way it's often taught. In fact, I've done readings for so many manifestors who don't relate to the anger piece at all, or have been deeply hurt by people assuming that they're angry when they're not. The anger of the manifesting generator, sorry, the manifestor, and this is true, by the way, of the manifesting generator as well. The anger of the manifestor is really not anger in the way we think of as anger. It is instead the interruption of the creative flow. You have an internal nonverbal creative flow and you're following that flow. And if that flow gets interrupted for whatever reason, that energy, that creative force that is like direct plug-in to divine spark, that energy has to go somewhere. And sometimes where it goes is it explodes. And that explosion isn't anger, it's interrupted creativity. And we have to really start to see it, especially when we see our manifestor kids getting angry. We have to recognize this isn't anger or defiance. This is creative flow that isn't getting fulfilled. And it's difficult for them energetically, and it's difficult for them emotionally because they're here to follow that flow. And when they can't, for whatever reason, then that energy has to dissipate itself somewhere. And so it looks like anger. We judge it as anger, but it's really not anger. It's interrupted creativity. The challenges for the manifestor is the lack of sustainable energy. You don't have the ability to work and work and work and work and work. You do need cycles of rest with your manifestor. Oftentimes it's frustrating because as a manifestor, you do move faster than others when you're following your creative flow. And it's difficult sometimes as a manifestor to get the right kind of support. And that means you don't necessarily need somebody to help you unless you ask for help, but it means you need people who can hold space for you while you do your creative thing. And for people who don't take it personally that you don't need them, because the manifestor doesn't need people, but they want people and they love people. And sometimes we equate love and need. And if you are a manifestor or you're a manifestor child, you don't need the same things that, say, a generator or a projector child does. And that the kind of support that you need is space for you to have your freedom within healthy boundaries. The spiritual purpose of the manifestor is to translate divine inspiration into action. And that action then becomes kind of like the billiard ball on the cosmic pool table or the billiard table, right? Is the white ball that goes ping, ping, ping and hits all the other balls and get them rolling. When you are a manifestor, you're following through with your connection to your divine inspiration causes you to take action, which in turn initiates others. Because of this, I like to call the manifestor the initiator. You're here to initiate inspiration, manifestation through following your own connection to the divine. Your quantum purpose is to initiate people into the energy or the frequency of transformation and creativity through direct access to the quantum pulse. In other words, your direct connection to the quantum field, to the field of infinite possibilities, and you following that connection through taking action creates a frequency of energy that is transformative and creative and initiates people into their own journey of transformation and creativity. Again, anger for the manifestor is not being rude or unacceptable or throwing a fit or anything else that maybe you were told you were doing when you were experiencing the anger of that creative disruption. It's your energy saying, oh, I didn't get to follow my creative flow. It got stopped. It got impeded. Somebody interrupted me and I can't find it again. And again, it's not anger. It's creative disruption. And it's really important as parents that we help our children understand the nature of what these emotional themes mean, because when you can go, oh, I'm feeling angry. Oh, my creative flow got disrupted. Oh, I need to reconnect with my creative flow and inform so that everybody knows that I'm on my way to do my thing. And then try again if you can, rather than being punished because you were angry, because you were doing something and it got interrupted, and then shutting yourself down. Especially, let's just be real, if you're a woman or a girl, a female manifestor, we still have really strong societal biases against quote unquote angry women. And a lot of my manifestor clients have learned to suppress that energy so deeply because it was so not safe to experience anger or to express anger, that they pushed that away. And not only did they push themselves away from their energy and their creative force, they pushed themselves away from the internal signal that, oh, I'm a powerful creative being, and my creative flow got disrupted. And so they can't read their own connection to their power, and they have to relearn this. And this is something that we're designed by child development, according to child development and according to the way our energy field develops. This is something we're designed to learn when we're young children, 2, 4, 5, 6, and then learn in an even more refined way when we're teens. And if you don't get to experience that and express it appropriately, that's being the hallmark. Having somebody consciously and lovingly guide you as to how you can appropriately express that energy without repressing it or being made to feel bad or wrong or shamed for it. If you don't learn how to do that, you carry that with you then into your adult life. And it comes up over and over and over again in your relationships and in the way you engage with the world, not because you're bad, not because you're doing something wrong, but because your body, your energy field, your soul wants you to learn this, because this is how you interact correctly with the world. So the challenge for the manifestor, oftentimes as an adult, is to learn how to reclaim your power and to overcome feeling alone. Because again, sometimes what happens too is we equate not needing someone energetically with being alone. And the challenge oftentimes for the manifestor is learning how to tap into support and love and nurturing, which is what all human beings need, in a way that allows them to be true to who they are and also still have the freedom to go do their own thing without being burdened by obligations or being in such a way in a relationship or a partnership that's not true to who they are. So some challenges or some questions I want to encourage those of you who are adult manifestors to contemplate and to journal with or to meditate on is, do you express your full power or do you hide it? And is, in some way, shape, or form, is anger potentially keeping you from fulfilling your power? The parenting challenge for the parent of a manifestor is to raise manifestors who are aligned with their creative power and who are connected to their unique purpose of being these creative initiatives. Manifestor challenges include the need to inform, anger, knowing how to tap into your inner authority. This is a much bigger conversation, but for all of the other types, there's something outside of you that gives you keys and clues and insights into what's the next right step for you and what's the timing on the next right step. Manifestor doesn't have that. And I always tell, everybody always says, oh, I wish I was a manifestor. And I always say, it's hard to be a manifestor. You have to make decisions based on your own inner alignment with whatever your unique chart is saying your alignment needs to be around. And it might need to be around your will center, and it might need to be around your solar plexus or your root pulse. And if you don't know how that works, if you're disconnected from your own inner awareness about your own inner authority, it can be tricky sometimes for the manifestor to find that inner click that goes, okay, now the time is right, I'm going to go do it. And I find that in working with my clients that getting manifestors reconnected back with that inner authority is probably, next to helping them learn how to be okay with their anger, is also tricky. It's not impossible. It's totally possible, but it's a different conversation than teaching a generator, hey, just go like this. Okay, good. You got it. Go. It's a lot more complex and subtle oftentimes for the manifestor. So in the process of loving your manifestors, whether they're your children or your partners or your friends, understand that it's not so easy for the manifestor to go, okay, I'm going to go do this. They have to wait for all these little gears and things to sync up and click into place. And they have to be aware of what those little gears are for them to be able to move forward, for them to know when the timing is right, for them to take the right action. I do find that for some manifestors, and this is something you can explore and experiment with if you're raising a manifestor child, that just like with projectors, they sometimes really need to talk through things, especially with the defined will center. They need to talk through, this is my process, this is my experience, this is what's going on with me, to get a sense of their own inner click, like what's right for them, what do they need to have in place before they take action. Again, the manifestor does not have sustainable energy. So recognizing when you're parenting a manifestor child, that this is a person that needs cycles of rest. And oftentimes as a parent, because you have an open sacral child that doesn't always know when enough is enough, that sometimes you have to help them see when enough is enough and make sure that they are building into their creative process places of rest and respite. They have a tendency to burn out. A manifestor can burn out. Now, manifestors don't usually burn out until they're a little bit older, but they certainly can get burned out in the short run in short cycles too. And so recognizing that the adult manifestor oftentimes doesn't burn out until they're about 50. They can be fake generators until they're 50 and then they hit a wall. Younger manifestors aren't going to burn out necessarily in the same way, but they, again, can avoid a lot of it by being true to who they are and knowing how they operate and understanding their energy and learning how to create in the way that's right for them. One of the challenges for the manifestor is when they get the green light to go do their creative thing, it's difficult for them to keep pace with others because they way leave them in the dust. Or if the inner authority isn't giving them the green light, sometimes they have to work hard to keep up with others because they're not in that creative phase. They're in a respite phase or a rest phase. Manifestors can really feel different from other people. And that feeling different can be really painful, particularly again for my adult manifestors. Oftentimes they feel so different and oftentimes they feel so repressed because they've had a whole lifetime of people telling them, stop doing that, what are you doing, stop doing that, stop doing that. And they haven't learned to connect to their own inner authority, and they haven't learned to inform, and they haven't learned about the power of their anger. And so they oftentimes have a lifetime of kind of pulling aside and feeling very different from everyone else. In relationships, it's the manifestor that needs to initiate, which isn't usually a problem if you're a guy, but in women, in relationships and women leading, if they're a women manifestor, it's the woman manifestor that needs to initiate the relationship to make the relationship correct, which means if you're a woman and you have the hots for someone, it's your job, if you're a manifestor woman, to start the relationship, to ask the guy out on the date, right? Now, I think that that's getting easier and easier, but I'll say 10 years ago when I was coaching manifestor women, I still coach manifestor women, but a few years ago, that was really, really difficult for women still. And I really do think I think we're starting to have breakthroughs, but I do find that women who are of a certain age, who are manifestors or carry manifestor energy, are still bumping up against old societal norms around gender and how women should behave, right? And that's not usually a correct model for a manifestor woman. Manifestor woman needs to be the one that starts things, and that's tricky sometimes. Manifestors are not here to be told what to do. Nobody is, by the way, but it's a little bit easier with generators and projectors and reflectors. With a manifestor, you've got to have a good set of parenting skills that allow you to create healthy boundaries, healthy limits, and freedom simultaneously, and to give that manifestor child the freedom within those boundaries and limits to be who they are, and to not tell them what to do, but to find creative ways to inspire them towards right action that are not exhausting and manipulative for you as the parent. And again, take the Parenting by Design program, because Kristen has so many amazing hacks on how to really show up for your manifestor child. Manifestors with the open sacral, sleep can sometimes be an issue for all manifestors and all humans with open sacrals. The open sacral sleeps differently than the generator. Generators need to wear themselves out every day and fall asleep exhausted at the end of the day. If you're a generator person and you are not tired at the end of the day, it means you didn't do enough and you didn't wear out your body. If you are a manifestor, you need to be in bed before you're tired. You need to be lying flat before you fall asleep, because your sacral, that square in the design chart, needs to get rid of all that extra energy that it's taken in all day. And if you don't have that opportunity to lay flat and to change the nature of how the universal energy is hitting your energy field and to discharge that extra energy that you picked up, it can be really hard for you to get good quality sleep. And what happens a lot of times is if manifestors are sleeping like generator types, if they're waiting to be tired to go to bed, then what's happening is they miss that window. And if you're raising a manifestor kid, you know where that window is, right? They miss that window, and then all of a sudden they're like, right? They're super hyper, or they go to sleep for a little bit and they wake up again in the middle of the night. And now they need a glass of water, and now they got to do all that stuff. And then they want you to come in and read a story, and they're not sleeping well, or they're restless, or they come into your bed and kick you to death because they've got all this extra energy that they're burning off, right? And they're not getting good sleep, and you're not getting good sleep. So a manifestor child needs to be in bed before they're tired. Same for a manifestor adults. I find that giving them something like a book on tape to listen to, or music to listen to, or meditation to listen to, gets them settled down and helps them discharge that energy so they can sleep. And ideally, if you listened to last week, you know that before children are 7, the aura is immature, and children actually, when they're before the age of 7, actually do really well co-sleeping. Most children, not all, but most, even manifestor types. But at a certain point, as they mature and their aura matures after 7, they really need to be sleeping in the integrity of their own space. So if you can, it's not always possible, and I know that, but if you can, a manifestor child does really, really well in their own space, their own room. If they can have that, it also facilitates for them sleep. And here's the kicker. I really do believe that about 90% of challenges that we have in parenting are a result of lack of sleep or lack of good quality sleep. When children don't get enough sleep, or they don't get enough good quality sleep, it actually causes their serotonin levels to go down. When their serotonin levels go down, they start to have all the symptoms of ADD. They don't have ADD, but they start expressing the symptoms of ADD because the symptoms of ADD sometimes mirror the symptoms of chronic long-term sleep deprivation. And in the coaching work that I've done with families, I find that if we get the kids to sleep, first of all, not only do the kids sleep better, the parents start to sleep better, everybody starts to sleep better, serotonin levels go up, and suddenly all the challenges of the anxiety in the family, all the tension and all the irritability and all the shortness that happens in the way we respond to each other goes away. And 5 to 6 weeks of everybody sleeping well, total game changer in a lot of cases in families. If you are raising a manifestor, you have to teach them to inform without controlling. Again, helping them sleep correctly is important. They need freedom, but limits for safety. You need to support them in learning how to interpret their anger. So when they get angry, pay attention to what were they about to do. Start giving them the vocabulary of what their anger is about. So you might say to your manifestor, oh, you're feeling angry because you were about to go do this and now you can't. Or you were angry because you were about to go do this over here and you got interrupted. And all that creative energy that you have, now you're feeling, it's making you feel mad, right? You've got to have good strategies with a manifestor child to support them in learning how to express their power appropriately. If you don't have in your parenting toolkit a way of working with your child with win-win negotiation strategies, of helping your child be accountable and responsible for their choices without being punitive and without thinking like you have to be right or win. If you don't know how to do win-win conflict resolution, you've got to get some different parenting skills, because your manifestor child needs you to teach them how to do power appropriately without overpowering, by learning how to parent in a way that is empowered and supports you in being an empowered parent so that you're not being exhausted and you're not burned out on parenting, and supports them in growing into being an empowered adult. And I put this in parentheses, depending on your own value system in your family. You've got to support them as they become teenagers and understanding the nature of how their sexual energy works. If you love a manifestor, you want to give them freedom. You want to wait for them to initiate. Don't ask them questions. That doesn't work for a manifestor. Give them open-ended statements and allow them to answer the open-ended statements, and use statements such as, I'm wondering if, I'm wondering what you were thinking when you decided to go out to the end of the road and open the gate and go into the wilderness. I'm wondering if you're feeling angry because you got disrupted. Don't ask questions when you ask them yes or no questions, or questions in general. They're drawing on sacral energy they don't have when you question them. Inform your manifestor if you're loving them. They not only need to inform you, you need to inform them, because they need to know what to expect. Don't interrupt their creative flow. Trust them. We tend to glom on to the manifestor kids these terrible expectations. Trust them that they know what they're doing. The more you trust them, the more they cultivate for themselves their own self-trust. Honor their power. If you're in a romantic relationship with a manifestor, be open to their sexual suggestions. They might have something to teach you that might be fun and juicy, and understand their energy and their need for downtime. If you want to learn more about how to raise your manifestor, how to really support your manifestor child in growing into the full expression of their creative power, and learning how to interpret their emotional energy as a tool of self-awareness, go check out Kristen's course, Parenting by Design. I put the website up here. It's kristenshorter.com/parenting by design. As I said, this is a class that she has set it up so that it's open for everyone. So everyone can take this program, and she's got some really, really great bonuses for people who register at the full price, at the recommended price. Go check it out. She's giving away free readings. She's doing all kinds of great stuff. So show up for this. It's really, really, really important, not only for your child, but it's also helpful for yourself, so that you learn to reprogram yourself and your own conditioning field, so you can show up for your kid the way you really want to. All right, I was only a minute over, Cindy. It's turning into a good game.
So did you want to, first, thanks to Jeff and to Ellen Sue on Facebook, they both found your child that said they were rescued by a bear. They said Google is their favorite friend. I was seeing, this is pink. Do manifesting generators have the traits of both? From
Yes.
Zila.
Totally. I think manifesting generators are kind of like a 2-for-1. You get all the stuff that the generators have, plus a lot of the stuff that the manifestors have. So absolutely. And in our next part of this series, we're going to talk about generators. And then after we talk about generators, we'll come back and we'll do an hour on manifesting generators, and you'll see how we weave it all together. So yes.
Baljit says, so if you're not a manifestor but can very clearly resonate with these challenges, you definitely have some imprinting going on from friends or family. I'm still going through each family member's chart, so not sure if I have a manifesting generator in my immediate family. I'm a 6-2 generator. What are good ways to start undoing the imprinting besides trying to align more with what is the correct pattern for your type?
Well, it's really easy for the generator. As I would just say, just get religious about responding. The more you respond and the more you really live in that sacral energy, which is what we'll talk about next time, the more you'll stop paying attention to all the other stuff, because it'll feel off and it won't feel good. So.
On Facebook, Mary said, my 7-year-old grandson is a manifesting generator. How to get him to do his homework?
Ask him yes or no questions, and then you got to let him. I mean, this is hard. This is the hard part of parenting. First of all, you have to decide where are your boundaries and limits around homework. And so for some of us, it might be like, I don't care about homework. And then it's on you, right? Then you go talk to the teacher about, look, you know what? I'm just not really into this homework thing. But if you have really strong beliefs about homework, Then you have to set it up where the boundary is, hey, I don't care how you do it, but the homework has to get done, right? That's the boundary. And then with the generator type, you can start asking them questions. Do you need a snack before you do your homework? Are you in the mood to do your homework? What do you know what you need to do your homework, even if you're not in the mood? What can we do to celebrate when you get your homework completed, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can lead a generator child through that journey. And we'll talk about that when we talk about generators next time.
Elrena's had, years ago, I gave my manifestor freedom and power because of extreme love for my son, a pure generator 4/6. Now he's 38 years old, and I'm still paying the price for my weakness. Now he behaves like a manifestor, and I'm in my deep knot self. How can I reclaim my independence, my peace to be myself again? I keep distance with him, but the moment we meet, he doesn't allow me to even open my mouth. And unfortunately, he isn't in human design.
So that's a really complex question, and I definitely don't have a magic answer to that at all. I would start though with this: reclaim yourself, no matter what, no matter what. And I would say that in my experience in coaching people, the more you reclaim yourself, the more the people around you will either line up with it and the nature of your relationship will change, or they drift off out of your field. And I find with our kids, for the most part, they want to be connected to us. So the more you stay true to who you are, eventually their energy changes and they can be much more aligned with who you are in your orbit. Cool thing too about adult children is, even if you don't use human design language, you can still talk to them and say, hey, being a parent is hard, and there's some things that I did that I wish I had done differently. The bottom line in the parenting journey is this: I love you more than I can even put into words. I'm wondering how we can explore creating a more intimate, better friendship as parent and child now at this phase in our life. Initiate a conversation, see what happens.
And then the last question that I'm seeing right now is from Raman. I'm 38 manifestor, but my energy is always burnt out. What strategies do I?
If you are burned out, you have to heal the burnout first. There's nothing else you can do except heal the burnout first. So if you go to the Facebook page, on the Facebook page, if you go to there's a little tab on the left that says videos, go to the Human Design for Everyone Facebook page, go to the videos. There's a whole series of videos that I did last year about burnout. I think I did it at the beginning of the year last year. So there's 3 videos about burnout. Go watch those videos. So.
If he's not on Facebook, they're also on the blog. You can click on the keyword burnout in the blog. Unsure. Do you want to take the last question, or are you ready? Because we are running over.
Yeah, I'll just answer this one briefly. Here's the thing I'm going to tell you, Jessica. If you have an open sacral, and this is true for projectors and reflectors too, your relationships, your sexual energy in your relationships is always going to be conditioned by your partner's energy, especially if they're generator types. So the real challenge here is you can engage in whatever energy feels delicious and right for you. And I would lovingly and gently say, be mindful if you're going to make a longer term connection with someone and longer term commitment with someone, that you like the energy you're committing to. Because if you're in a sexual relationship with a generator type, you're probably not going to be able to change them, which means if you don't like what's going on, you're going to have to shut yourself down in response. And that's important. So, all right, that's it. Thank you all for joining me. Next week, Sandra Lee, Alana Heim, they're going to be here talking about human design and energy. So be here, projector manifestor teaching. And then the following week, I'll be back talking about generator types. Thank you, Cindy, as always, for writing Side Saddle with me. Thank you all for joining me. Have a great weekend. I'll see you all in 2 weeks.